welcome. Okay, Valerie, Ellen, Claudia, welcome to the call. Raise your fees without losing clients. And it looks like this is a good time for us to start. So I'm going to start. So Jan, next slide.
Okay, hold on just a sec. Oh,
Okay, so a little bit about SCORE. This is Hudson Valley in Greater New York. Our goal is to foster vibrant small businesses through free mentoring and education, so there's no charge. We serve small business communities. It doesn't matter whether you're a startup or an established business. We have confidential business mentoring. We do webinars and workshops, and we have an extensive, really extensive online educational resources of all sorts. Our mentors have a wide range of industry experience. I know in Ulster County, we have a number of different backgrounds, so people run their businesses. Next slide. So this is a list of all of the chapters who are participating in this webinar. And this is contact information. You will get this at the end of a day, probably not more than 48 hours after the end of the webinar. Okay, next slide. So today, everyone's muted during the presentation. So please submit anything you have to tell us in the questions. And we'll look at them later in the presentation. We'll bring up some of those questions. All right. Next slide. Next slide.
There we go.
Okay, got it. So today's, have you ever wanted to raise your fees, but you were afraid you'd lose clients? Or maybe you don't know how best to explain the reasoning for the increases. Join the club. This is very common. There are many ways to raise your fees. Why wait? So in this webinar, we're going to learn the top 3 things to do to raise your fees and 1 thing never to do. How to talk about outcomes and results to help your clients achieve, how to write your elevated elevator speech with outcomes, how your expertise DNA differentiates you as the expert, and how to handle client objections. Next slide. So our presenter today is Jan Wallen. She's worked with business-to-business entrepreneurs and companies for more than 15 years, raising their fees and revenue. Her #1 best-selling book, Raise Your Fees Without Losing Clients, Why Wait? 5 Simple Steps to the Income You Want, is now available. Her catchphrase says it all: outcomes power income. Jan says, when you talk about outcomes, your income goes up. Her clients master the courage, confidence, skills, and know how to raise their fees, and they often see results in the first week or 2. So with no further ado, here's Jan.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Rose. Welcome, everyone. So glad you're here. Do you want to raise your fees? You're afraid you'll lose clients? You don't want to face the rejection? Or you're not sure quite what to say? Join the club. I hear that a lot. No worries. We'll talk about that all today. There are many ways to raise your fees. Think about this as you go along and write some notes down of the things that really are most relevant to you. For example, some ways to raise your fees are with your current clients. Another way is with new clients. For example, one of my clients decided on a date, and after that date, all of her new clients came on at the higher fee. It's not as though you have to raise the fees across the board with everything all the time right away. You can choose when to do that. You can also raise your fees on the same services you're providing, or when you develop new services, perhaps you charge higher fees for the new services. Offers and sales pages often have a price, and then sometime 6 months or a year later, you may want to raise the price. And also they often have an early bird price. And then after a certain date, it goes up to the regular price. That's another option for you. This is a really good one about your signature system. That is, if you haven't done it already, I highly recommend putting the services you offer into your own signature system. That is, for example, 5 to 7 steps that take your client from the beginning of working together all the way through to the results they get. Once you put your services together in your signature system and call it that, name it, you're able to charge higher fees because people see that you're professional and have a system. Another way is to solve a bigger problem or challenge that your clients have. For example, one of my clients does training, and some of her training includes training on team building. What they found is that team building, stronger teams, make it possible for employees to stay longer in their jobs or at their companies. So that's one thing she was doing. And then we decided the best thing for her would be to add a consulting component that helped her clients retain employees. So instead of only doing trainings several times a year, now she's involved in solving a bigger challenge. Another way, this is also easy for you to do right away, is to up-level your positioning for your online presence, LinkedIn, social media, your bio, your media sheet, everything like that. Be sure it really shows that you're the expert. It shows your credentials and credibility and positions you as the expert. It's critical to stand out from everyone else. If you look like everyone else and people don't see that you're the expert, they don't choose to work with you. And another way that you may be able to do right away is add-on services. For example, let's say that you provide consulting services, and perhaps that includes several training sessions. An add-on service could be quarterly check-ins or quarterly reviews to be sure everything is on track. And that would be something that your clients can add on to your consulting, and they're paying for that add-on as well. So be creative about how you raise your fees. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 things that make the most difference. So if you've already decided you want to raise your fees, you'll learn some things that you can do before bed today, something you can do tomorrow, and something to do always from now on. Plus the one thing never to do, so you can avoid that. In the 15+ years I've worked with clients and companies and consultants and entrepreneurs raising their fees, I've learned what really works and what doesn't. There's a lot out there to listen to. What you're going to learn today are things that really work and that you can put in place for yourself. I'm really excited about my book. It came out, it was published in May and was #1 on Amazon. And it's available now. And you'll see through the slides, you'll see page numbers. Those are all pages that refer to pages in my book. So what are the top 3 things that'll make the most difference? #1, elevate your elevator speech. That is, add outcomes to the elevator speech you already say now. The second part is about visuals. Studies have shown that people understand and remember information 60,000 times faster when they see a visual than when they see words. And if you have your signature system, you can create a visual, and I'll show you how. And #3, talk about your expertise DNA. Find out what it is and then include it in your elevator speech and in your bio, your LinkedIn profile, everywhere you are, so that people see what is different about you. And when it comes down to it, why choose you? And then I'll also show you the thing to never do, which is wing it. So let's start with number one, elevating your elevator speech. There are formulas out there for how to write an elevator speech. Most of the formulas say who you work with and what they want. So for example, if I was going to say my elevator speech that way, I would say, I work with B2B entrepreneurs who want to raise their fees. Well, that's all well and good, but so what? It doesn't say I do it successfully. It simply says who I work with and what they want. Another one could be I work with companies that want to retain their employees. So what? Here's how you can elevate it with outcomes. Your elevated elevator speech is who you work with, what they want help with, their challenges, and the results you help them get. Sometimes in a networking meeting, we have time to do more than 30 seconds as an introduction. Let's say at a networking meeting, sometimes I've been to chamber meetings and everybody has 90 seconds. Well, in that case, make the most of it. Take your elevated elevator speech and then add a story about how you get the results. Here's an example. The elevated elevator speech, first one is, I work with entrepreneurs who want to raise their fees. For example, one of my clients signed on the biggest and most profitable client in his company's history after working with me. That shows exactly what people can expect when they work for you. They immediately pay attention compared to all of the ones that get to sound the same. And then if you have an extra minute or 90 seconds, then say, when we started working together, my client was looking for more clients. He wanted more clients and wanted them to come to him more easily. First thing I did was look at his niche and the industry he was in. Well, he was in PR. There are thousands of people who are in PR, who do PR, or who say, I'm in PR, I do PR. He's lost in the crowd. So what we figured out was his expertise DNA was crisis PR. If a company is in a crisis of some kind, like there was a disaster or something, they're in the news about the crisis immediately. Well, they need PR help immediately too to handle the crisis. So he started talking about himself as being a crisis PR expert. That's when he signed on the biggest and most profitable client. So think right now, I'm always an action step person. So think right now, what are some results you've helped your clients get? And what did your client want before you started working together? How did you work with him a little? You don't want to tell the full long story. However, you want to just say one or two things you worked on, and then what was the end result? Here's another example. Accountants, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accountants. So if every accountant stands up in a networking meeting and says, I'm an accountant, it's like, so what? We came up with an elevated elevator speech for him that says, I help entrepreneurs retire 2 to 3 years earlier than they thought they could. Well, who doesn't want that? That's exactly what people said. Oh, I want that. And they started coming to him after the meeting to set up meetings and talk to him more. So think about how you can do the same for yourself. How many of you have made pancakes? Raise your hand. I have, make them sometimes. And I don't know about you, I find the first pancake I make is never the best looking. It's burned, or it's crumbly, or it's not the round shape, or it's not cooked enough, or it's bubbly or something. Well, this is the first pancake syndrome with your elevator speech, or you can say your sloppy first copy. The first time we do anything, it's not perfect. Give yourself the permission to create an elevated elevator speech that isn't perfect the first time. Create several and then practice it with colleagues and see what they think and all work together on it. So don't expect your first elevated elevator speech to be perfect. So action steps again. Your results elevator story. List your results, maybe 3 or 5 results, and then list stories of how you helped your clients get those results. Put it together in an elevated elevator speech and practice it. You may have more than one elevated elevator speech. For example, you may talk to a company that has a specific a challenge that's similar to many in the same industry. You may have another client that has a specific challenge, so you may want to write an elevated elevator speech for that specific challenge. Number 2, create visuals of your signature process or your signature system. So first of all, think of how you achieve the results you do, what the process you go through and you take your clients through. I recommend 5 to 7 steps because our brains think in terms of 5 to 7 steps. If your process has 10 steps, people immediately think, oh, I don't have time for that. That's too many. So think of 5 to 7 and put them together. Then create a visual. For example, the pyramid is one that Alan Weiss uses, and he prints this out and includes this as he talks to his potential client about the next project. And he shows them with the visual exactly step by step how they're going to do this. I've done this also. It works beautifully. And create it as a PDF and give it to your potential client after you talk or send it to them. This means they have a piece of paper in their hands that they can give to other people. There may be more than one person involved in the decision. And if they hand this other person your PDF, they can see what your process is. Otherwise, you're left with the person you talk to trying to think of how to explain what you do. So create the visual and then a PDF. The one on the right is one that David Newman did in the middle of a presentation to illustrate a point. It just does it beautifully. Everything comes together in a quick visual like this. And here's one that Nancy Juetten uses. She calls it her virtual cocktail napkin. You can create any of these, and you'll see the difference it makes. The third thing that makes the most difference is your expertise DNA and talking about it, owning it. It's what makes you different. It differentiates you and positions you for your ideal clients. It's also why you get the results you do, because it's your unique combination of values, skills, and expertise. No one else has the same expertise DNA that you do. And it also helps overcome objections because you stand out as being different and the expert. Here's an example. One of my clients was a CEO, and he was looking for a CEO position to work with a private equity firm. When we did his expertise DNA process, we found out he had very strong experience and expertise in sales and revenue generation, and also extensive finance expertise. It's rare that you find someone with sales and finance expertise to the degree he had. Think about 2 things in your own career and your life. What are 2 things that you have that's not like everyone else? And then the other one was my client, who's the PR expert. When we took him through the expertise DNA process, we found out crisis management is his expertise DNA. Now, the one thing to never do, this is really important. Never wing it. Know your clients inside and out. We have tremendous resources now at our disposal online. LinkedIn, social media, websites. There are even data services that provide information on industries. Do the research. Know what their challenges are. Know their successes, everything about them. And again, I go into this more in detail in my book on page 63. Also find out or know what their bottom line challenges are. What are the challenges that they're really concerned about and really want to solve and will pay to solve? Some industry research helps in this area. Find out some of the challenges in the industry. One of your clients may want to be number one in their industry. Well, how can you help them with that? Also find out what the value is of solving it versus not solving it. Here's an example. Retaining employees is a real problem right now. It has been for some time. Every time an employee leaves a company, it costs at least $15,000 to bring someone else in and get them up to speed. That's thousands of dollars for each employee. So what's the cost if 10%, 5%, 3% of their employees are leaving? How much is that costing them? As soon as you point out that that's something you can help them with, they want to work with you. The other thing is objections. This is kind of a touchy subject for some people. No one wants to face rejection, and it's not always easy to know how to answer an objection. So, no worries. Here's what you can do. First of all, be prepared. When you've done the research on your client, and you might think back on all of your clients, what might they be concerned about? It could be fees are too high. It could be the time it takes to achieve the results. Just think for your own businesses. What have people asked you before? How have they asked an objection? Make a list of them. I recommend, you can do it on paper. I recommend Evernote or another app like that where you can have it at your fingertips and on your phone. That way, every time you hear an objection, you can add it to the list and you'll be more prepared next time. Another thing, know the results you've helped your clients achieve. Maybe write those in a list also. They may be helpful when you answer the objection. And then this one, simply anticipate them and address them before they come up. You'll see this a lot in online advertising and offers and sales pages where they think about why might my client not want to sign up? It could be the price, it could be other things. Again, the time frame is another big one. So if you handle them in your presentation or your sales page, then you're further along in handling the objection. Might not come up at all with your client. So you've anticipated, prepared, done your research. When you're in the situation, the objection may look like, that's over our budget, or, oh, that's more than we were expecting. Or they may come out and simply say, your fees are too high. Pause, breathe, don't freeze up. You want to find out exactly what they mean by that. So say, oh, that's over your budget. Use their words. Oh, that's over your budget. How do you mean? Tell me more. And then listen very carefully to what they say. One example of this may be they're saying, oh, your fees are too high, or that's over our budget. And you say, oh, that's over your budget? How do you mean? Tell me more. One answer may be, oh, well, we're in the middle of some other projects right now. We can't commit any more money at this time. That's not a no. they have their funds already committed. So your next question can be, when would it be a good time to start this project? Then you handle the objection and you go from there. Or another one might be, if they say it's too high, what would you like to take out so that it fits your budget better? The most important thing, don't freeze up. Simply pause, breathe, and thoughtfully ask for an explanation. So, what can you do now? Here are your do it now action steps. Before bed, and I'm going to count on you to do these. Before bed today, write your elevated elevator speech, your sloppy first copy or your first pancake copy. Tomorrow, create the visual for your process, your signature system. It could be something like a triangle or circle or intertwining circles. Once you have that, write down the steps that are in your process and fit it with the visual. And then always from now on, when you know your expertise DNA, talk about it in your elevator speech, in your bio, in your media sheet. Many people now are guests on podcasts, and you have a media one sheet. Be sure your elevated elevator speech is there and your expertise DNA. Everywhere you are, put these out there. You can scan the QR code here and for the book, and also I have free resources there. It goes to my website, raiseyourfees.com, and you'll be able to find a free resource for your elevated elevator speech and also one for handling objections. Here are some additional ways you can reach me. I do welcome questions. We're going to have a Q&A shortly. And if we don't get to them, or let's say that you're thinking about this and raising your fees in the next few weeks, here's some ways that you can contact me. My website is raiseyourfees.com, and my email is jan@raiseyourfees.com. Again, here you can scan the QR code for the book and free resources. Really listen here. If there's one thing you take away from today, one thing, remember, when you talk about outcomes, your income goes up. And you can quote me on that. So we have some time here for some questions. Put your questions in the Q&A box and we will be addressing them.
Okay, so Richard says, if you have a solution for a problem your potential client does not know or he or she has, what strategies work best to get them to recognize its existence?
That's a really good question. Part of it might be do your research and really know what, this is something that we as entrepreneurs often do, actually. We're able to look at a situation and see what can make it better or what can improve it or what changes can be made so that the challenge isn't there. Everyone can't do that. And if we simply come in and say, you have this problem, I can help you fix it, they're not necessarily going to be so receptive to it. So if you recognize the problem, research it more and find out if any companies in their industry are having the same challenge. And let's say that you do some research and you find out that a number of companies in their industry or type of business are having a similar challenge. At some point, not in a sales conversation, in another conversation, you could talk to them and say, you know, I'm studying the XYZ industry, your industry. And I'm noticing that a number of companies have this challenge and mention what you see as the challenge that they don't recognize. Have you had, is this anything that you're concerned about, or have you had a challenge with this? So present it in a way that you're not telling them they're wrong or something's wrong. Just ask them, other companies in your industry are experience this. Is it something that's on your radar screen? This also brings up another really good point. Do market research. Part of the never wing it is market research. A lot of it you can find out on LinkedIn, websites, data services. Also, talk to people. Call, or worst case, in my opinion, is to send an email. If you really want to build a relationship with a potential client or with a client, have a conversation now and again that is not about sales. Really say, it's okay to say, I'm studying companies like yours and your industry so that I can serve you better and provide the services that will really move you forward. And this is one of the things you can simply ask, is this something you've had a challenge with?
Okay.
Excellent question.
Okay, Jan, Sue wants to know, what's the best way to tell current clients that I have new rates?
Okay. The first is decide how you're going to, are you going to be raising your fees with the same services they've been receiving? Or are you raising your fees with new services? For example, if they're finishing up on a proposal or on a project with you, or if they bought things from you and then they're going to continue, or are you going to let the current project stay at the current fees, and then it's when they sign on again that the new fees? So the first thing is you decide when you're going to do that and how you're going to do that. And then the best way is to give a reason why you're raising the fees. Always give a reason. You might say, there a lot right now that's a lot of the talk right now is about inflation. And a lot of companies now are raising their fees. So people are somewhat used to raising higher fees than a year or two ago. So you could say, in order to provide the best services for you, my costs have gone up and I'm raising my fees. Always give a reason for it. Or you might add a service in at the higher fees to say, my fees are going up at effective such and such a date. With this consulting now, you also receive quarterly check-ins. So you're giving them something in addition also. Those are two ways.
Okay, so somebody says, what's the language to use to write a price increase letter or notice?
Okay, it's very similar to what I just said. Put what I just said into written words. Of course, put it in your own voice. Nothing is worse than someone receiving something and it doesn't sound like you. So put it in your own voice. Again, think about where you are. Are you working with them? Are you in the middle of a project? Are you about to start? If you're about to start with a new client, they don't know that you're raising your fees. So you might you'll just explain that in the proposal, what your fees are. If they're going to be starting with you on a new project or buying more from you, I would definitely say something about, it's been a pleasure working with you, and talk about the value that you've already brought. So if you've already trained a number of their people or provided things to them that they can they can see results, point out that since we started working together, here are some of the things that have changed in a positive way. So you're showing them the value that you've already brought. And then I will continue to add more value. And after such and such a date, my fees will be such and such. So say something about what you've achieved already, so that brings it to their mind again. and then give a reason.
Okay. So Carl wants to know, he says, I'd like to know how to navigate against negotiating rates with prime contractors who are continuously asking you to lower rates because they feel as though your rates are too high and the highest in the area. How do you combat that? We're up against multiple problems as subcontractors within Region 8 in the construction industry. There are companies that come in front in from out of state that offer lower rates and don't have to abide by the local union fringe benefit and wage rate schedules.
Okay, now you may be in a situation where you must abide by those. I really can't speak to that. What you really, again, want to show the value of what you're bringing and realize everyone may not be a perfect fit. The other thing is about if someone says your fees are too high, it could be, I'm not as familiar with this specific situation, but let's say, for example, in a corporate, anybody who's saying your fees are too high. First thing is, say, compared to what? You want more information from them before you answer. So say, compared to what? Or what gives you the idea that they're higher or something, and let them see what they say after that. People who are buying services, for example, in corporations, and again, I'm not so familiar with this situation, but people it's their job to ask for a lower fee. And sometimes they're even trained to ask for a lower fee. It's part of their responsibility, the same as it's our responsibility to state and charge our fees. There may or may not be something you can do, but absolutely find out why they think that, why they're saying that, and then show the value of what you do and how it's different.
Okay. I think we're good. We're out of time. We're over time. Next page, Jan.
Great.
So next month's webinar is 8 types of insurance for your business needs. It's Wednesday, March 15th at 1 o'clock. Next page.
And
Thank
there
you.
we are.
Next. So just so you all know, we are supported by the Small Business Administration, and that's how we get the money to run SCORE. So thank you all and good luck. And for anybody whose questions did not get answered, you're welcome to email Jan and ask again. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.